Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you very much for joining us here at RUSI today for the latest in our cyber series of talks. My name is Conrad Prince. I'm a fellow here at the Royal United Services Institute and help lead the cyber program at RUSI and formerly of GCHQ. I'm delighted today to welcome Victor Zhora, the Deputy Chairman and Chief Digital Transformation Officer at the State Service of Special Communication and Information Protection in Ukraine. Victor has been at the heart of Ukraine's cyber defense during the illegal war unleashed by Russia, and has been at the absolute center of the very impressive work that Ukraine has been doing to protect against Russian cyber operations. He spent his lifetime, I think, in the cybersecurity business, both in government and in the private sector, and we're very grateful and very privileged to have the opportunity to hear from him today. So the plan for the next hour is that Victor's going to speak, give us some thoughts for a few minutes. I will then start the conversation with a few questions from me, and then we'll open up to questions from the audience. Now, as usual for us, in order to do this, please can you write your questions in the Zoom Q&A function, and I will then keep an eye on those throughout the event and will relay the questions to Victor. And you can start putting questions into the Q&A function as soon as you like. Please don't wait for Victor to finish speaking. We'll finish in about an hour, so 1500 in the UK time. And just to say that today's event is entirely on the record. So the whole event is on the record. So with that, thank you very much for joining us. A huge thanks to Victor for joining us. And now let me hand over to Victor for some opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Conrad, and all the RUSI team for having me, for inviting me to speak. This great audience, and it's my great privilege to be invited and to have this opportunity to tell about the cyber war in Ukraine and what Ukraine is doing to counter this continuous cyber aggression. So good afternoon, everyone, and I will start from the explanation of the role of cyber component in the in this unjustified full-scale invasion to Ukraine, which started on 24th of February last year. And we understand that this is a full-scale war, which has 5 domains, 3 conventional domains, then the cyber domain, and even space domain was used, for instance, during one of the first attacks during this full-scale invasion, which basically have earlier origins in 2014, with the start of annexation of Crimea and the occupation of eastern part of Donbass. Immediately after these events, the cyber component of this hybrid war started emerging, and it happened during the presidential election in May 2014. There was an attempt to interfere the elections and to make some subversion and propaganda impact with the use of fake news, a fake picture of winners of presidential elections. This attack was later followed by a series of destructive cyber attacks, starting from attack on Ukrainian critical infrastructure in 2015, then followed with the attack on Ukrainian media, Ukrainian government entities, the State Treasury and the Ministry of Finance. Then the first attack on the ICS with the code called Indestroyer in late 2016, and finishing with the most destructive attack in a history, which is called NotPetya on 27th of June, 2017. After that, we put all our efforts here in Ukraine to build a comprehensive national cybersecurity system with the help of our international partners, with the help of internal funding, which allowed us to build capacities for cyber defense, which allowed us to train the workforce, which allowed us to launch a number of cybersecurity agencies combined into a signal system coordinated through the National Security and Defense Council, and improve internal and external cooperation with our partners. That's what we did with the expectation of the upcoming war. And in the middle of 2021, we launched a reform of the national cybersecurity system, which included the opening of UA30 Cyber Center as part of the state Service of Special Communications and Information Protection of Ukraine, which I represent here. That was a number of measures for preparation to the upcoming aggression, which we expected, as I said. And the first major attack started on January 14, 2022, with the, again, false flag operation, with the defacement of governmental and private sector websites, with the first use of Whispergate under the classification of Microsoft, and it was combined with a huge information campaign, and we understand that it was the probing of ground how Ukrainian society will react to this kind of severe attack. Then, in less than a month, it was followed by a huge DDoS attack, the largest DDoS attack in the history of Ukrainian, focused on Ukrainian financial system, which was aimed at causing panic among citizens because of unavailability of ATMs, of payment services, etc., and continue with the number of severe cyber attacks on February 23rd, a day prior to the full-scale invasion, which started with the famous attack on KSAT subnetwork of Viasat satellite provider, which again was focused on disruption of the communication line of Ukrainian armed forces, which was used as a backup communication line. So it did not affect the overall coordination of Ukrainian armed forces in the first hours of war. But it also provided a collateral damage among our partners, including NATO countries in Europe, affecting some wind power generators, affecting users of satellite TV, etc., etc. And during the first months of war, and I will start sharing my screen. As you can see, here we have cyber attack, which I mentioned, January 13 and January 14, mid-February and the 23rd February, which was coordinated with some political military events. And in the first months of war, our National Incident Response Team, CERT-UA, which is a part of our service, recorded 3 times bigger major cyber incident as within the same period of the previous year. So the overall activity, illegal activity in cyberspace tripled. And in general, during the last year, we recorded more than 1,000 of cyber incident, which were processed in manual mode. But in general, with the automated processing, there were up to 7,000 cyber incident, which were registered, and we even don't know about the others. So what industries are in focus of the adversary? Obviously, it's the security and defense sector and government and local authorities. But at the same time, the attackers continue focusing on financial system, on transportation, on Ukrainian media, critical infrastructure, including energy sector and telecom sector. Our CERT-UA team is tracking 85 threat actors, most of which, to 90%, are from or are affiliated with the government of Russian Federation. And we consider these groups to be divided into three subgroups. The first, most dangerous, most skilled, and perhaps most numerous are Russian military hackers, which serve for GRU, which serve for FSB, for SVR, the Foreign Intelligence, and different departments of the Ministry of Defense. The second group are cyber criminals. By the way, the large number of cyber criminals refuse to participate in this aggression, but the rest have joined offensive cyber operations with their skills, with their tools, being a part of this cyber aggression. And the third group, again, perhaps less skilled, but again, very numerous and potentially dangerous, with the potential to improve their skills and extend their activity, are so-called hacktivists, which are gathered in different Telegram channels. But it's absolutely confident to us that among these groups is always an officer of a special service of Russian Federation. So who is the most active in attacking Ukraine and our partners? And here we have the most active group, which is called Gamma Redon, or USC 0010, according to our classification. So we have 76 incidents recorded associated with these groups. Of course, there are other groups, for instance, the famous Sandworm, or APT28 or APT29, which are also very active. And of course, there are operations from Killnet Group or Hacknet or Cyber Army of Russia, and other groups that are gathered into Telegram channels. Here we have on this slide, we have the timeline of operations. So you can see a huge boost of numbers of incidents in the beginning of year, February, and then March. So as I said, there was a huge increase of the overall number of incidents, and later, but most of them weren't highly sophisticated. So the hackers used the first month, hoping for the quick win in the conventional operations. But later on, they were forced to seek for more advanced opportunities. And in the end of March and the beginning of April, we saw a number of destructive cyber attacks on Ukr Telecom company, one of the largest telecom providers in Ukraine, the attack on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, an attack on the Ukrainian critical industry with the modified code in Destroyer 2. That was an attack on a power distribution company in a certain region of Ukraine, which in case of success could lead to a blackout for more than 1.5 million people. In summer, there were continuous attacks, but with less severity and with less quantity. And again, it started raising in autumn, which was supported by cruise missile and drone attacks on Ukrainian energy objects. Again, there was a huge boost in the end of year, but we continue observing the shift of focus from destructive operations, despite them being very interesting scenario for executing these attacks. But nowadays, these attacks are mostly focused in data collection. So this is a classical cyber espionage. And to our observations, these can mean that Russian Federation is ready for a long war, and cyber operations are used to gain the advantage on the battlefield with the use of some important and sensitive data that they are seeking in our networks. But here we have major actors which I already named, and there are a lot of different classifications, but our incident response team, together with the Security Operations Center, are tracking of those activities which we put in our quarterly reports and our researches. So back to conclusions. Of course, there were much higher expectations from Russian cyber offensive because they were considered to be the most powerful cyber power in the world. But there are different factors, and one of factors that some of important accesses were burned prior to the invasion. And in most cases, the attackers needed to search for new ones, and that took some time. Of course, the major factor remained that the cyber weapon and the use of cyber operations provides less impact than the use of kinetic weapon. Of course, the adversary has the right to attack Ukrainian hospitals, schools, residential quarters with missiles. The impact can be reached much quicker than with the use of sophisticated and long-term cyber operations. The third factor, I believe, are the technology sanctions, which were effective with the absence of software, cloud environments, hardware. It's difficult to organize an infrastructure for attacking, and it's much more difficult to rent this infrastructure abroad because of many eyes of intelligence following illegal activities of Russian hackers. The fourth factor, to our belief, is the intellectual flow. So many people who are skilled enough were smart enough to leave Russia prior to the invasion, or in the first half a year of the war, before the conscription campaign, which started in September. And I'm pretty confident that continues to happen. So all the potential for extending the capabilities of Russian hackers are quite limited because of huge percentage of professions been engaged into these operations and the lack of qualified human power in Russia. The next point, of course, is resource-intensive preparation. So it requires a lot of financial resources, a lot of time, and a lot of skilled professionals to execute a sophisticated cyber attack. With the sanctions, with the limited access to financial resources, I believe that is much more difficult than earlier in the years of uncontrolled activities of Russian threat actors. The next factor is the activity of volunteers that we are focusing on Russian infrastructure. And obviously, some activities and some very significant portion of attention to internal infrastructure was put from offensive teams that could have been busy with attacking Ukraine and our partners. So they need to defend themselves too, and this is the one of key factors that reduces their ability to attack us. And last but not least, I hope that our cyber defenders were good enough to protect our infrastructure, our networks from destruction. And of course, that was possible with the help of our partners from private and from public sector, from our partner agencies, which is difficult to overestimate. It was really really huge and continues to be huge and growing. As a conclusion to my speech, we can state that over these 14 months of full-scale invasion and full-scale cyber component in this invasion, Russia hasn't reached their strategic goal in attacking Ukraine in cyberspace. That was due to many factors which I named, but the crucial factor remained is the cooperation with the private sector. Not only a global private sector, which helps us with the licenses, with threat intel, with cloud environments, but is also a private sector inside Ukraine. Many volunteers, some of them join our service and help us to protect our digital boundaries. Some of them joined armed forces, and some of them remained in their businesses, helping us voluntarily. The next point is, of course, global cooperation. We feel to be engaged into a number of very powerful initiatives, and I'm confident that we are building the strong cyber coalition, the coalition of states with responsible behavior in cyberspace, and that means that we should be united, and all cybersecurity issues should be highly considered in the decision making, in policy making. Final, I think we need to be united countering this aggression, because it basically cannot be stopped. It can be reduced, but with the growing digitalization and growing factor of use of IT technologies, and with the potential higher impact of cyber operations, this factor would be more and more valuable in future. Thank you very much for your attention. Conrad.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Victor. I really appreciate it. And it was a really helpful account of what you've been through since the invasion and what you continue to go through. And again, to want to pay tribute to the great work that you've been doing there. You provided some, if I sort of kick off with some questions, and then please, audience members, put your questions in the Zoom Q&A function, and I will play those in as we carry on with the conversation. But if I start, Victor, I mean, you set out some really interesting factors behind why, possibly why the impact of the Russian cyber attacks has not been as great as many may have expected, as we might have expected. And of course, this has been a feature of a lot of the commentary around this. And some of the commentary has kind of suggested, well, maybe we've been worrying too much about Russia and they're not that big a threat in cyberspace after all. I mean, I guess I'd be interested in your views, having had the experience of the last, well over a year now. How do you think we overstated Russia's ability? And what do you think might come next? What are you concerned about, if you are concerned about further areas that Russia might take their operations in cyberspace?
Thank you, Conrad. Starting from the last point, I think that the Russians continue to be very dangerous because they have enough resources and they take their time to get prepared for new cyber attacks, which will happen without any doubt. And even in case of some sort of finishing operations, kinetic operations on the battlefield, the cyber activity, cyber espionage, influence operations will definitely continue after the victory. And in case the success rate of these operations is high, this experience would be considered by other authoritative states, authoritarian states, as the way of influencing, the way of targeting other countries. and the way of potential engagement of cyber offensive forces in full-scale military operations. So our efforts should be obviously focused on reducing the possibility of joining of other states in this cyber war. I would say that this is full-scale cyber war, not just conflict. And we need to do everything to avoid this situation when the cyber weapon or offensive technologies can be distributed, can be shared with Russia, which was officially declared state sponsor of cyber terrorism after attribution of the Viasat attack. That was a joint statement of 27 countries. And I think it's only the beginning. But what is important? We had a mechanisms of attribution, and which worked well during investigation of Viasat attack. But unfortunately, we don't have powerful instruments of bringing attackers to accountability. To our opinion, there should be an international cyber tribunal which operates on a continuous basis. So the factor that can significantly reduce the will to participate in these cyber offensives is the inevitable accountability. So the attacker should understand that finally, eventually, he will be brought to this accountability and will be punished. That's what I think is one of the major efforts we should be focused on right now.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And obviously that accountability issue has been the thing that's been a challenge both at a national level, but also dealing with individual threat actors and groups. I mean, particularly, of course, where many of them come from Russia. We've just to move on to that, there's a lot of interest in the questions around the criminal groups and the hacktivist groups that have aligned themselves with Russia, and just unpacking a little bit more about that. I think one question that we've had is, you mentioned briefly that in your view that there were Russian state operatives, directly involved in conversations that the hacktivist groups are having. I mean, could you just say a little bit more about that? I suppose the question is, what's your view of just how directly the Russian state is driving, tasking even, these hacktivist and criminal elements? How much are they operating independently of the Russian state, and do you have a view on that? And I guess a follow-up question we've had has been, you mentioned that a number of criminals and criminal groups haven't been, aligning with the Russian state, Russian groups. Sort of, how have they managed to achieve that, if you like? I mean, how did they get away with it? So a couple of questions about the sort of criminal side.
Well, of course, there's a lot to be done by law enforcement with regards to investigation and attribution of attacks to cyber criminals. But let's take Conti, for instance, which disbanded in early days of war, and which has members from Ukraine as well, which refused to participate in aggression against their country. And there are many other groups which were formed from Russian citizens who were lucky enough to leave the country prior to the invasion or in the first months of it, and simply cut off all activities. With regards to availability of, management of security service officers in hacktivist group. Of course, there are some evidences of this. So we have disinformation through threat intel. We have other sources of information, and I believe there is a huge competition for the resources. All of these groups, which being a part of offensive cyber power, they want to prove their efficiency to their official chiefs from special services, from SVR or FSB or whatever. And one of the way of proving that is, of course, executing of orders. So in case there's interesting target, of course, they will take as the probing target, and again, if successful, then they can hope for some assistance, some funding from official government and from leadership of Russia. I have no doubt, and that was stated on the recent Cyber UK conference by NCNC and other speakers. So this was discussed almost every panel discussion, and not only that, there is a huge concern in Russian offensive groups, including so-called hacktivists or volunteer groups in targeting of critical infrastructure in Western countries. That is known from threat intel. That was what we have ability to get through our channels of communication and intelligence, and which is confirmed by our partner agencies abroad.
And thank you, Victor. And just to pick up on that, I mean, you know, arguably a lot of the attacks that these sort of criminal so-called hacktivist groups have been doing have been, you know, they haven't had a big effect. They perhaps have had a propaganda effect, but their practical effect has not been strong. You know, low-level DDoS attacks and so on. Do you see an increase in capabilities? Do you see any evidence that those groups are going to start using more destructive capabilities or disruptive capabilities? Is that something? What's your view of that? Is this something that's going to get worse, or are we just going to see this continuing kind of low-level DDoS and similar activity?
That directly depends on the efficiency of our countermeasures, because I have no doubt they are seeking for new tools, for new exploits, for new 0 days, and they put all their efforts to extending their capabilities and recruiting of new talents to their cyber offensive. So I think that perhaps the vector of their development and focus of their attacks will be still in data collection and subversion. And again, it depends on targets, because I would subdivide all attacks into 3 groups. And first is related to sowing of propaganda and misinformation, which we call basically subversion, all influence operation, all this interception of broadcastings, interception of air, and defacement of web resources. The second group is cyber espionage. It's a collection of important data from Ukrainian networks, which can be later used by military units or for some I don't know, filtration procedures on occupied territories, so which was proved earlier. And the third group are destructive operations aimed in disrupting of services, of online services, of IT infrastructure, which of course will be still in focus with regards to Ukraine, but with regards to our Western partners, I think the attackers are focused in sowing of propaganda with the goal to reduce the assistance to Ukraine, to provide influence operation. There are cyber espionage operations in our allies' networks. Again, is focused on seeking for some important information about military assistance provided to Ukraine. What kind of weapon is supplied? What are the terms? What are the specifications, etc. The flow of attacks and their goals can obviously change in time, and that, as I said, directly depends on our counteractions and directly depends on priorities of Russian leadership, with great consideration of situation on the battlefield.
Thank you very much. It's great. We're getting a lot of questions interested in your cybersecurity response to the threat. And I guess, I mean, just to sort of pull some of those together, I'm just interested in what did you regard as the most important cybersecurity measures to you in protecting against the Russian threat? And I guess, you know, when you're talking, or if you were talking to other countries thinking about Russia and a Russia cyber threat, or a cyber threat from any hostile actor, what's your advice from your experience in Ukraine of the most important areas that those countries should be investing in around cybersecurity and cyber defense?
Thank you, Conrad. It's a really great question. And first of all, I'm confident that our experience that we gained from countering of this full-scale first global cyber war is very useful and important for our partners. So Ukraine wants to be this kind of contributor and wants to be an active participant of the global resistance to this cyber aggression. And that was proved that some initial measures that we took prior to the invasion were quite effective, starting from building of capacities, for monitoring, for incident response. And of course, they're insufficient. So our next goal is to scale up these capacities, to organize more incident response team in many regions, in industries, to train this workforce. That is, education is obviously one of key focuses in cyber defense, and education can vary from simply raising the awareness among people on cyber warfare and all the basic measures that should be considered with regards to the aggression. So simple cyber hygiene rules, and that's what we do in our daily work. We use CERT-TA, we use our service media channels. We spread this information to people of Ukraine, how to protect their data, how to use strong passwords, how to use messengers, how to safely surf an internet, etc., etc. Just avoiding opening of malicious attachments. Many of these measures combined together can reduce the risk up to 90%. The next focus is in education, is of course building a cyber force and reserve for cyber force in case of full-scale cyber aggression. That's what we did without prior experience, but it worked. So many of volunteers from private business are quite effective in defending our country. And that's perhaps what our partners can consider, starting from specific educational curricula in universities, and the procedure of recruiting of talents to public service, or to critical infrastructure facilities. The next, with regards to education, is again raising of awareness for decision makers, which should always consider cybersecurity in their policy making, in local policy making and in global policy making. And the idea that Russia should be excluded from all organizations which influence or directly provide this policy making is crucial. Then we should improve our cooperation, and that should be done domestically and internationally. We have 9 cyber agencies in the national cybersecurity system of Ukraine, 9 government entities which are responsible for different areas, including intelligence sector, including law enforcement, cyber police and security service of Ukraine, including regulators and incident response like SSCAP, including the National Bank, the Ministry of Defense, etc. Of course, all these entities are responsible for their particular areas, but they should exchange information quickly. They should organize joint teams for incident response, for investigations. And of course, a key focus should be in improving our relationships with our international partners, because we need to not only organize joint cyber exercises and exchange indicators of compromise or exchange information on threats. We perhaps should align our approaches in building of our cyber forces, defensive cyber forces, and building of our national cybersecurity systems, including legislation for that.
Thank you. That's a really powerful agenda. A sort of follow-up question. Again, there's interest, inevitably a lot of interest in the role of the private sector in working with the Ukrainian government in your cyber defenses. And I guess that we've got questions really essentially around what do you think has worked well in terms of your government collaboration with private sector, whether that's domestically within Ukraine or internationally? What would you have liked to have more of? And what are the next steps? What's the next level for private sector collaboration with Ukraine, and what lessons could the rest of us take from sort of public-private collaboration in your experience?
Well, first of all, we are thankful to all our partners that proposed assistance to Ukraine in the first days of war. And this support is continuous. It's ongoing. And we continue using all services for threat intelligence kindly proposed by our partners. We continue using cloud environments for hosting of our IT infrastructures, our important registers, electronic services for citizens and businesses, for storing of some important databases. And we made the decisions very quickly with the adoption of new legislation, which consider all the security risks which we had, even including the risk of power shortage because of missile strikes. To ensure operability and continuity of services from our data centers, we needed to quickly find new approaches, and we found them. So our next goal is to continue maintaining the same level of cyber resilience that we had, and improve the incident response, improve the prevention of cyber incidents, and strengthen our cyber security, cyber defensive infrastructures. That again can be done with the help of our partners, and our goal is to continue extending these partnerships and cooperation with our partner agencies, with private sector. And again, it's one of key factors in our cyber resilience. What can be done better? I think one of key factor that decreases our ability is that we need to scale up internally. We need to recruit more people capable of implementing of all the solutions, and especially in potential victims in organizations from public sector, from businesses, from Ukrainian enterprises, and from critical infrastructure. Because I believe that the amount of proposals is really high. But we need these people who are capable of implementing all these solutions and procedures, and capable of quick incident response. And now we launch a number of initiatives, including CTFs, seeking for new talents, young people that can join us in our task of defending Ukrainian cyberspace.
Thank you. And we've had a follow-up question on your work with the private sector. I mean, one of the issues that always is a challenge, I think, for many countries, certainly in the UK, is being able to work in an agile way with the private sector, being able to bring them on board quickly. I mean, did you have to change just some of your models for working with the private sector, your commercial models, how you work with them? I mean, what was your experience there? And are there lessons that you would share with other countries?
To be frank, our capabilities to finance cyber defense is decreased because most of budgets are spent for kinetic weapon for the front line, and we are a country of volunteers. Everyone is helping Ukrainian armed forces with this regards. So the assistance that we continue getting from our partners in cyber is very important and invaluable. With regards to our focuses, we consider different types of protection. So it's multi-layered, and we should be united with Ukrainian business, with the private sector, and all our proposals for improving legislation, based, by the way, on experience of first attacks in the beginning of January 2021, are focused on bringing the variety of tools to businesses. First of all, having the cybersecurity officer, the CISO, and in each critical infrastructure facility. Then we launched an initiative of allowing private volunteers seeking for vulnerabilities. That's our daily work. We search for vulnerabilities in Ukrainian networks, but we should be joined by private sector, and that is their initiative, which is formalized in a number of pilot projects that we have with private sector. But it's really important. We cannot scale up to the whole country, and the potential help from private sector and private cybersecurity experts is crucial to this point. Next point is again building of this cyber reserve, attraction of talents, and extending the responsibility of our agency, of our partner agencies across the country, and of course giving new standards and recommendations for protection to private sector, mostly focusing on critical infrastructure. So we had as a recommendation a set of recommendations, a cybersecurity framework, but in our proposal for a draft of law on cybersecurity, we have it mandatory for critical infrastructure, and we set up the whole ecosystem for implementation and for assessments of all cybersecurity measures taken in these facilities. We of course understand that most of this assistance is pro bono by Ukrainian volunteers, and despite having these limitations with state funding, we are seeking for joint projects with our partners, and we are extending the overall assistance to Ukraine from our friends across the world.
Great, thank you very much. I want to sort of move on to just probe a little bit more with your views around Russian disinformation and propaganda operations. We've had a number of questions from the audience about this, and I guess to summarize, the questions are: how effective do you think those Russian disinformation operations have been? How successful do you think they've been? How have you responded to them in Ukraine? What's your best lessons and best advice for how to respond effectively to disinformation campaigns? And, you know, is there additional help you would look for from allied governments in working to counter the disinformation threat?
Absolutely. I'm confident that the overall efficiency of these disinformation campaigns in Ukraine is low, because most of these campaigns are focused on internal audience, and understanding the sources of this high percentage of support of this absolutely unprovoked and unjustified war in Ukraine inside Russian population is due to this misinformation and propaganda campaigns on Russian TV, and technical measures reducing access to truthful media in the internet. We understand that, of course, there is a SORM system. Of course, there is full control over social networks in Russia, and of course, there is a DPI that and even ban of some important global services inside Russia, which could propose access to truthful information. Our efforts, we have two centers for countering disinformation, one in the National Security and Defense Council and the other in the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, who fight these threats with our help in cyber, in information sphere, with the help of media providers. We have a single TV marathon for huge groups of people, the source of truthful information. And we, as a service, we even gave some recommendations to people on occupied territories, how to avoid being monitored by Russian special service, because all the traffic was rerouted to Russian telecom providers, and of course is under control of Russian government. And we advised them on the using of VPN technologies, etc. But a huge percentage, a huge volume of these subversion operations is done through social media, global ones, and more or less successful. We have this continuous negotiations with the administrations of these social networks, and identifying of bots, identifying of sources of fake news is again an important part of this countering campaign. I think that is exactly the area in which we can be united with our friendly governments.
Great, thank you very much. Very clear. Just got a few minutes left. A number of questions I'm just interested in exploring a bit more about your own cyber volunteers and the cyber army of Ukraine and attacks that have been launched by sort of Ukrainian volunteers who are not part of your state organizations against Russia. So I guess two questions. How important for you has that activity been? And what's your answer to some who would say, well, what's the legal basis for these activities? They're not, these are members of the public, they're not aligned, they're not part of a state organization. What's the basis on which they're carrying out these operations against another state? So what do you say to those questions?
The major basis is the intention, the will to help our country to defend ourselves, and with the use of skills and talents from those people, the use of their experience. And I think that it's the main nature, the main reason for these people to be joined together in all they do. The legal basis, of course, with regards to domestic legislation, this activity isn't prohibited by Ukrainian law with regards to the aggressor. And of course, there is a greatest field of discussion with regards to international laws. And there were many new ideas which evolved during these 14 months. Including prosecution of cyber war crimes, this permanent tribunal, and many of new ideas. But perhaps we should review and reconsider the international legislation, which should allow volunteer forces, experts from private sector, and protecting of their countries during the aggression in this way. So I consider this isn't purely offensive. It's counter-offensive, of course. It's a response to aggression. And while Ukraine is forming our cyber forces that will have an official mandate from the government, these guys are helping in their way. And again, as a citizen of Ukraine, as a patriot, I can only thank them for their efforts of decreasing the adversary's ability to attack us.
Sure, thank you very much. We're almost out of time, so a kind of final question from me, I guess, just sort of stepping back. I mean, so much is written and talked about the use of cyber and cyber operations in war and in conflict. I guess this terrible and illegal war that you're experiencing is, probably the first real example of of cyber playing a part in a significant and awful conventional war. I mean, so what are your thoughts about the role of cyber in a military context, in a warfare? Where do you see it playing the most significant role, the least significant role? What are the lessons that you draw from what has been, a terrible experience, but a kind of pivotal experience in our understanding of where cyber fits?
This arises from three groups of cyber operations, which I named earlier. And some of them were more effective, some less effective. With regards to subversion and disinformation, I don't think these measures were effective. With regards to cyber espionage and data collection, it is one of their focuses right now, and I think that they will consider this group of operation to be primary. With regards to disruption, the expected impact is lower. The actual impact is lower than expected. And some of cyber operations turn to be supportive to military. Sometimes supporting the destruction effect of kinetic operations, sometimes supporting and amplifying the psychological effect. And we had our research that was published in March or February that described the coordination between military attacks and cyber attacks. And I think in some extent that will continue to serve as supplementary, as a supportive measure to kinetic attacks. But just as the potential impact of cyber operations is growing, they will obviously extend the amount of these operations, and will highlight their role in this hybrid war. Of course, if it happens, it can be widely used by other potential adversaries.
No, thank you very much. It's a very clear, brilliant summary and some really important lessons for us all to take away. I mean, our time is up, Victor. I mean, huge thanks from me and from all of us here at RUSI for you taking the time to talk to us today. It's been a fascinating and an inspiring session, huge amount of interest. I've tried to cover off most people's questions. Apologies to those that I've missed. But I mean, thank you once again. It's been great to hear from you. You've been doing amazing work, and long may that continue. And it's been a real privilege to talk to you today. Thank you very much.
Likewise, thank you very much, Conrad, for inviting me, and thank you to the audience for listening to me. We'll definitely prevail. Thank you for standing with Ukraine, and thank you for supporting us.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.